G'day peeps, I'm up here at Mac's hut. I'm with Ron Connley. We're just going to have a little chat. Ron's going to give me a bit of information about the horses that used to be bred up here on the high plains, and we all know that basically the remnants of those herds are our modern day brums, but Ron knows a lot more about it than I do, so I thought we'd take the opportunity to catch a little bit of history on film while we've got the chance to catch it. So I'll just ask Ron if he can fill me in a little bit as to who used to breed the horses up here and how they got here, and how many of them there were and things of that nature. So I'll throw over to Ron.
Well, the first horses I know of that come up here, Youngs from Vanambra used to bring over 2,000 horses up here over the summer to winter them, to summer them up here. It'd take them 2 days to bring them out. They'd walk them from Vanambra to the Kabunga River down the bottom end of Innisfail. They had a little paddock there, holding paddock. They used to hold them there, and then they'd walk them right up here to Young's hut and Young's yard the second day. And this used to be their lunchtime stop. That's how it come to be named in a plain, the little plain just up above here. They had a great big yard up there they used to use for mustering. The horses had come down Young Spur, and it was just a natural way for the horses to get off. They had a log wing, just a heap of logs dragged across, right across the spur and leading right down into the yard. And it was a beautiful place to yard them. And when I first saw that yard, would have been 70 years ago, over 70, that yard was probably 7, 8 foot high, 9 foot in places, just all logs thrown together. They'd drag them in with the draft horse and pull them up, slide them up with on a couple of spars with a draft horse. And the yard itself would hold, I don't know, 5, 6, probably 700 horses. But and they had a hut there. That was Young's hut. That was there where they used to stay. And they used to breed them for their mainly for the armies. And one of the Miss Youngs, Bella Young, came to our pony club at Inamunti one day, and one of the women got her to come and have a talk to the kids. And one of the kids asked her what was her best horse experience with her life. I think she was nearly 80 then, and she said when she was 16, she came from Vanambra up to here with her father and 7 or 8 men. They mustered all the horses in Pretty Valley in there and drafted off 800 horses. They would go to the army. They would have all been 3 or 4 year old. And they walked them from there down to Stratford, the head of the railhead there, and put them on the train there to, I think they went to India or somewhere, she said. Then they rode home to Vanambra. And that's about all I know about the Young's horses. Ben McNamara's took over these leases, and they ran horses here. Had a lot of horses. Jack McNamara was the man that had them, and he had 2 or 3 really good stallions over the time. He had a thoroughbred horse called Sheldine. He bred some beautiful horses, good work horses. They were really good. I rode quite a lot of them. And he had a little pony called Billy Isles. There was a man lived around here called Billy Isles. He must have brought him here. Only a little pony, but they bred him over bigger horses, and I rode a lot of those Billy Isles horses. They were good little horses. Then he bought a piebald stallion, and there was a lot of pieballs around here, and they're all descendants of that one piebald horse. And I've still got quite a few of them at home, descendants of those horses, and they are very, very good horses. One of them actually, I'm not sure whether he went to the Olympic Games, but he was a reserve horse, show jumping horse for the Olympic Games Australian team. And they were very good horses too. And I spent a lot of time here with McNamara's, helping them with cattle, and broke in a lot of horses for them. And their main camp used to be Young's hut, and most of the McNamara's didn't seem to like work, and they never patch up the hut or anything. And eventually the Young's hut where they used to camp fell down. The snow knocked it down, and so that's how they come to build this hut here, which was a lot better for them because it was only halfway up the mountain. And this has been their hut, I don't know how long it's been here, as long as I can remember, and that's over 70 years. They had a man by the name of Stan Johns from Omeo, was the man that built it. And there's a bit of an extension on this end here. Charlie and Jack and Peter McNamara and I put this on here. Peter McNamara, I built the fireplace. It's not the one that's here now. One we built wasn't quite as good as this one, but we thought it was pretty handy. We were only bits of kids then, 16 or 18, 17 or 18 or something like that. And used to be horses everywhere here, a lot of horses and a lot of good horses.
So obviously the horse trade petered out.
Yeah.
So I dare say at the end of that they sort of mustered what they could, but didn't manage to catch everything, and those remnants that they couldn't get their hands on became the Brums that we've got today, or the descendants of the Brums we've got today.
That's right. When Youngs had horses up here, like the horses were worth more than cattle then. Cattle you could only eat them, or you might have a bullock team or so, but the horses, everyone needed a horse. If you wanted to go anywhere, you had to have a horse. You either rode a horse or drove a horse or you walked. There was no motor cars those days. Anyway, as the motor cars got about, the horses weren't wanted so much, and they weren't nearly as valuable, and then suddenly people didn't want them, and they were a bit of a nuisance. And McNamara had a lot of horses here, and I can remember coming up here with them at one stage. They brought a few blokes up, and we're going to muster all the Pretty Valley into Young's yards, and we got up there and we got about 60 horses put together, but by the time we got them together our horses were knocked up, and we got the first day we got them down to Young's yards, and they wheeled around, and old Jack was down there holding a mob of quiet horses. They were supposed to be coaches, but if the wild ones had got in there, he wouldn't have held them on his own. But he had a lot of pieballs in his mob, and as soon as all these horses saw all these pieballs, they took fright and turned around and ducked down under the yard, and we're coming down on top of the ridge, and the horses are going back up underneath the yard. So the next day we got them all together again, and my job was to turn them down Young Spur. I was right out on the feather top side, and my horse knocked up, and I just, the Brumbies were, or wild horses, they were just down to a trot. They were knocked up too, and my mare that I was riding was knocked up too, and I just could not quite head them. And anyway, I had to let them go because my mare she would have dropped dead on me if I'd have kept her going. And I just sat on that mare and watched these horses trot past me, single file more or less, and there were 63 of them I counted. And there were some magnificent horses in amongst those horses. And anyway, that night I asked old Charlie, I said, how long since you mustered these horses, Charlie? Oh, he said about 10 years, but they thought they were just going to go up there and run them in the yards again. But if we had got them in the yards, we wouldn't have held them when we got them out anyway. They'd have just went straight through us and in and between us, and they would have been gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got a long, proud history up here in the high country. how does it feel to you coming up today? No cattle left, knowing what the government are planning on doing with the few wild horses that are still up here. You've spent a lifetime working up here in amongst it. I can only imagine that it sort of guts you a little bit to realise that might be coming to an end. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yes. It's sad to see no cattle, especially when you see how much feed is here. I've never seen this much feed up here before ever. If we'd had cattle up here now, they would have been mud fat by now. Any that didn't get burnt in the last fire.
Yeah.
The last fire was really bad. Like you can see all the dead trees everywhere. Usually a fire doesn't kill all the trees like that, but there's just places where it's just everything is dead.
Yeah.
But when I first come here, there was none of all this scrub and this hop scrub. There was very little of that. There was just a tree here and a tree there, like a big open park, and you could gallop your horse through them, and it was great. And there was cattle everywhere, and anyway, the scrub has grown up after all the fires. The 39 fire, they grew up, and the hop scrub grew, and then the grass got less, and cattle got less, and then the government took over, and because they sit in the office in Melbourne and they know everything, and the poor silly buggers are up here trying to make a living of it. They don't know anything according to them.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. Walking around this morning, I can certainly agree with you with the amount of feed on the ground, and it saddened me to be up there and not see any cattle. I'd grown accustomed to it over the years as well, but so at its peak, Ron, how many horses do you reckon between Youngs and McNamara's they used to graze up here on top?
McNamara's would have only had, might have had 200 or 300.
Yep.
But I know Youngs used to bring at least 2,000 up here every summer.
Okay. Yep.
And there wasn't only them. Like most people bred horses and grew horses to make money. I don't know how many other families brought horses up here either.
Yeah. But they were primarily breeding them up here, certainly on the young side of things, primarily breeding them up here to provide to our militaries or other militaries.
Military, but everyone needed a horse.
Yep.
So they were breaking them in and they'd sell them to everyone. And they had everything here, from ponies, small ponies, to big, heavy, 3-part draft horse, half drafts.
Okay.
The big half draft horses were more popular than the Clydesdale horses. They do just as much work, and they were just as strong as a good big Clydesdale, and a lot more active, and most of them you could chuck a saddle on and jump on them and use them as a riding horse as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And the horses that they were breeding for the military, they were specifically sort of crossed over and bred across numerous breeds, I suppose, to create what we came to know as a whaler, or?
Yeah, they call them whalers, but they were just, Australian horses, the same horses that everyone rode. Most of them you could ride, but they needed a lot of sort of half-draft, heavy sort of horses to pull their wagons and guns and things as well. And they used to have a lot of them. When I started here, the main reason I got started here with McNamara is Peter McNamara. He's the same age as me, and he was here working, and I used to come up and just to keep him company, and I used to get paid in horses. If I broke in a couple of 3 horses, I'd get paid with a horse. Wouldn't be the best horse they had on the place, but that's how I got paid. They never paid you money. And him and I used to come up here, and our job mostly was to bring the pack horses with the salt up. And the old blokes, the best blokes, they would leave early with the pack horses with the tucker on it, and away they'd go. There'd be a lighter horse, and Peter and I'd have to pack the salt up and the heavy stuff on these old half-draft horses, and mostly they were mares. They usually had a foal following them and another one inside them, and you're trying to stagger up those great steep hills with a 100 weight of salt on their back, and it was pretty slow going. And we'd always get here a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours behind the other blokes. And when we get here, they'd say, "Where have you been? What have you been doing? We've been here for 2 hours."
Nice. Well, thank you for your insights. It's a part of our history and heritage, and it's a proud history and heritage. It's one that I don't want to see lost to time. It would appear that our governments unfortunately don't feel the way yourself or I or many other folk do. So just one final question for you, Ron, before I let you get back to staying warm. If you had one message for those shiny-bummed, clueless politicians down there in Spring Street that are making all these decisions with regards to your beloved high country, what I refer to as my big backyard, what would that message to them be with regards to moving forward and managing this place?
Well, my idea would be sack all those buggers sitting in the office, except one bloke to pay the wages, and then have people working up here like your dingo trappers and that sort of thing, and let the people that live up here and work here and know the country run it. They're not going to damage it. They're looking after the country, because if they don't look after it, they haven't got it. And it wants cattle here, and it wants a few horses. I know the horses there was too many horses here at one stage, and they do damage the place, but you've only got to look around now and see what the deer are doing to it. And as far as the horses and the cattle damaging the country up here, if they were really fair dinkum, which humans don't seem to be, if they want to get rid of the cause of all the trouble up here, they want to get rid of the human beings. They're the worst feral animals up here, I can tell you. You look at the roads they got carved out, the great roads carved out the side of the hills, and water races, and they clear the whole side of a hill for a ski run, and they claim that's not damaging the country. It's just the cattle over the track round the side of a hill, and cattle and horses always work on a contour. They don't walk straight up and down. If you go and have a look at the bushwalkers' tracks now, they go straight up and straight down the hill, and there's water rushing down there and washing it out, whereas the cattle and the horses go around the side on a contour. But they don't think about these things.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you, Ron. Thank you very much for your time and your insights. It was lovely to learn a bit of the history, and I agree 100% with your sentiments regarding moving forward with these parks. I think you guys did an amazing job looking after the place. As you said, you had to look after it because it looked after you. I think the shiny bums in Melbourne need to go, and they need to start listening to blokes like yourself a bit more. They could learn an awful lot, and this place had come back a lot closer to its glory days than it is now. So thanks for your time and your wonderful insights.